want to just like start it and immediately boom, we're recording, you're like on camera. It's more of like I want to have a chat before, and I always think that these little organic conversations are really interesting. And the
Yeah.
first thing that you had brought up, which I thought was really interesting, was that you were saying that when you were 14, you were doing half Ironman triathlons and you couldn't find anything bigger than that because you had to be 18. Where did you learn
Yeah.
about half Ironman triathlons at 14? Like when most 14-year-olds are goofing around, like, doing weird stuff, like you're unbelievably disciplined. How did that happen?
So I I don't actually know if I've been formally diagnosed as autistic, but I have some strong suspicions to believe my parents really believed that I was autistic because it's definitely my sister's very social, um, was much more like, but combined with so that kind of led to a hyper focus on anything I was doing when I was younger. So it started out. I guess I was like swimming and doing gymnastics and playing a few different instruments when I was really young, and then I started skateboarding, and then I started inline skating, and everything I did, I like, I just it was fun for a little bit, and then it was just like, how good can I be at it? And I sucked the fun out of everything. Um, and some point around when I was like 9 years old, I stopped swimming. I was just like skating, and I started getting like really chunky. Um, and I spent the next 3 years being like a pretty fat kid, and I didn't like it. Um, I can like kind of joke about it, but I still get like defensive about it if my sister makes fun of me for it. Um, but I started biking a little bit because I wanted to start exercising more and I wanted to lose weight. And I noticed when I was like 12 that I had a pretty like strong knack for biking. I was better than like pretty right off the bat, better than friends I had that had been doing it a little bit longer than me and had more experience with cycling. So I started doing that when I was 12. I did like this Seattle to Portland bike ride. It's like 210 miles. Um, we did it over two days. You can do like one day, 2 day. And so I was 12 and we did like 110 miles the first day and then like 100 the next day, something like that. And and I enjoyed that. And I knew I could do the longer stuff. So I didn't know I wasn't really good at like the shorter stuff, but I knew like in middle school PE, my fastest mile time was like 9:55. I was slow as shit. Um and I was fat. So didn't think I was ever going to be good at running. And come freshman year of high school in PE, we had to do a timed mile, and my mile time was six flat. And so I just from the biking went to a six flat mile, thinking I was never going to run that fast. And I was like, whoa, like I haven't ran at all, and I'm not that slow. So I started running. Then I got into like cross country and track, and I pretty quickly knew that like you can't just train your way to being a really high level. Like I ended up being on varsity and stuff, but there's no chance I was going to be like a D1 runner. Um, and so I knew that I could do farther events and do well because a lot of like people that age aren't doing the longer events. And so triathlon seemed like a natural segue because I'd started swimming, biking, and then found I was okay at running. Um, and I can't remember exactly like what led to it, but my dad was kind of into some of that stuff, and I got into like some of the triathlon stuff. And I saw, I don't know if you follow Ironman much, and I think you've done one, but or at least one, but uh, Norman Stadler, I don't know if you remember that name, but
Yeah.
yeah, German triathlete who I think won Kona in like '06 and '08 or something, '04, '08. There's a picture of him like on the cover of one of the like triathlete magazine or something, and his quads were just really like strong separation. Like he's so jacked. And then I was reading he did like super high volume like German typical training, and I got really excited by that because I was like, oh, like maybe like this is the sport for me. Like I can just train more and hopefully do okay. Um, So that's what led to me looking into Ironmans, and I quickly realized looking into Ironmans that I couldn't find anything that was that I was allowed to do if I wasn't 18. And I found a half Ironman that was actually in my state, that fit really well. So that's why I signed up for that. And my first one when I was 14, I was still pretty overweight when I did that one, like maybe 20, 30 pounds. And I wasn't like super obese or anything, but I was definitely not like thin, excuse me. And that one, I think I got 5 hours and 37 minutes. And then I did it again the next year and got 450. And I knew if I kept doing that, I could turn pro like by the time I was 18. But I think I wanted faster progress than I was having. And I'm sure even at the time I could have gone so much, like, you know, looking back, there's so much stuff I could have done differently to be much faster, with no changes in my fitness. But yeah, then couldn't do Ironmans. And I knew I'd do better at Ironman than half Ironman because I was training like 30 hours a week in high school. And yeah, so then I started getting into ultra running because I was like, well, that's logistically the easiest thing to do.
So what did that first race look like then? Were you like a 12-year-old who was just wearing beat up shoes that you got at like Kohl's, and then you had like a mountain bike or something? Would you have a road bike? Did you have gels? Did you have a hydration strategy, or was it just because I remember getting into like half marathons when I was, and that's, I mean, that was just a fraction of what you were doing, but I was like around that age doing half marathons, and I had these Reebok Zigs for 3 years, and they were so beaten up that you could see both of my big toes hanging out. And I had baseball sliders that were too big on me because I didn't have compression shorts. I had baseball sliders, and I had a cut off Green Day cotton t-shirt. And I wore that almost every day after school when I ran. And it was just
Yeah,
looking back, I'm like, yeah, I was running 7-minute miles at like middle school, high school. It was crazy. And then I started to like actually
but
train and eat well. And I was like, all right, let's, you know, hone this in. So what did that look like for you?
for that bike ride
I mean, there was the
when I
bike
was
ride
12
and
or
then,
the first like half iron.
yeah, even the first half Ironman. Like, what did that look like? Did you just kind of go out and do it? Did you put candy in your pockets, or were you like dialed in with nutrition?
I think I was, based on what you just said, a lot more sophisticated than that. So less low hanging fruit than maybe there could have been. But I would say, I mean, I was wearing decent clothing for it, like, you know, whatever the tank top, tri suit top is, and then tri shorts, a used wetsuit that I found at like a swap meet for super cheap for the swim. And then yeah, my running shoes were solid. I think with I think even at that time my nutrition, my thinking around race nutrition was like, maybe this is ignorant, but I think it was as good as it could have been for the the knowledge that was available at that time. I was, you know, I was really looking for every advantage that I could get. That's what I did with when I started doing Ironman again, a couple of years ago. I know with like age group triathlon or low level pro triathlon, there's a pretty low bar for entry just because there's so many things you can do to go faster, whether it's like aerodynamics or like, I mean, aerodynamics are a huge one, but nutrition's getting bigger and bigger. And getting those things right, you can be, you know, I don't want to say like mediocre athlete, but like you don't have, like, I'm not like a great athlete. I just have to find these like niche things that have like easy things that I can pick out to be a little bit better than other people at. So yeah.
And moving forwards from there, what was I want to get to the strength training, but when you bumped it up to the full Ironman, were you still doing 30 hours a week of training? Because 30 hours a week of training while you're in high school is bananas. Because high school is a long day. It's not like a
Yeah.
lot of people now like work from home, so you have time. It's like, no, high school, I mean, that's like a 7 hour day.
Yeah, I was so I never did a full Ironman in high school, but when I was doing all of that training, I mean, yeah, I was doing high school or club swim at the time, so that was like, you know, 1.5 to 3 hours a day. I would wake up early and bike or run. I would bike or run before swim practice after school. So I was doing quite a bit. And yeah, it was pretty ingrained in my head at the time that if I did more, I would be better. And, if I were to do it again, I would probably train a little bit less and get a little bit, I like at least like one like dedicated like threshold workout per week. I just wasn't doing any of that. I just thought more volume. Doesn't matter what it consists of. If I can run easy and do these like 100 to 200 mile weeks, then like gonna be gonna be great. But it didn't really work out that way.
And that didn't like at the time, did it invigorate you? Did it give you a sense of reason, a sense of purpose, a sense of personality? Because I know in high school that got me out of a lot of things with my family, and it really gave me
Mm.
structure, and I needed that at 14, 15, 16. Was that like a similar thing for you?
Yeah, I think it was a big outlet. My parents got divorced when I was 8, and it was kind of a weird dynamic going back and forth between houses through high school, like, because of their relationship and also like me becoming a teenager and stuff. But I was pretty. You didn't really have to tell me not to do anything in high school. I was just like, I'm gonna do what I want to do, and like, luckily, the things that I want to do are, um, not really the typical teenager bad things. Um, so I just wanted to train a bunch, and it did give me structure. It did make me feel like, I was still insecure about the fat kid stuff. So I was like, well, I'll be skinny. I'm not going to be a loser. I'm going to be good at this like exercise stuff. Um, but to answer one of your previous questions, when I got into actual Ironman during the PhD, I was definitely not doing 30 hours of training a week. I I don't know if it's a getting older thing, like a wear and tear thing, being a lot more muscular than I used to be, probably a combination of all of them. But I definitely don't have the tolerance to train like that now. And maybe if I really backed off the intensity, like across the board, kind of like I was in high school, might be a little different. But I was for most of my Ironman training during the PhD, I was doing 10 to 15 hours a week.
And what? How old are you now?
32.
Okay, I'm 30. Yeah, no, I
Very
realized when I was in my PhD, I was 24 to 28, and 24 to 25 was the last year that I got away with like no sleep. And I was like, all right, yeah, like
nice.
wake up. Like Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins had come out in 2018,
Uh,
2019, and I inhaled the book just like everyone else did. And I was like, I'm going to run my first ultra. And that's when I went nuts with ultras. Like I had ran 40 marathons before that book came out. And then when the book came out, I ran 20 ultras in the next like 2 or 3 years, and then kind of went back to marathons. And I haven't run an ultra in a couple of years. Around 24, I was getting away with like um, maybe 6 or 7 hours in the lab, 1 or 2 hours in the classroom, and then like 5 hours of TAing 3 times a week. And it was like
Damn.
on top of that, I was waking up at 4. I do an hour and a half of cardio, afternoon another hour of cardio, and then at night I would like train with the weights. And it was like
Yeah.
and then when I was like 25, 26, I hit a wall, and I went, "Oh my god, what is this?" And my dad's like, "That's age." And now at 30, I'm like, "Okay, there's this thing where you slow down a little bit. It's not a lot, but just a little bit." Now at 30, I'm like, "Okay, like I would like to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep if possible, but like usually that's not
Yeah.
going to happen."
Yeah. And who knows, maybe like being a SEAL accelerated some of that stuff for me. But I definitely trying to turn pro in triathlon during the PhD, even with just, biggest weeks were maybe 22 hours of training, but on average, I'd say 12 to 15, and maybe even 12 hours was probably the average. And if we had like a break or something, I might bump it up to 15 to 20 or like a light week at school. But um, yeah, for the most part, that drained me pretty bad. It dug me a pretty big hole, and like I ended up getting sick for a while after that. And I was like, I hate triathlon right now, and just felt like garbage. So yeah, stopped doing that after I turned pro.
What was the what is turning pro? Like do you have to place a certain time or a certain podium finish at a certain number of races?
Yeah, so USA Triathlon outlines um, probably somewhere around like 10 different criteria you can meet to be eligible for like an elite license. The one that I got, which for my situation was going to be the easiest, was you basically I think in 1 year have to finish with a point score above this certain cutoff. And I believe the point score is intended to put you in the 99.5th percentile. They have some algorithm that they use to kind of standardize different race courses based on the performances of those people doing it and how they did the year previously and how they do in other races. So I don't understand their system for it, but it basically be in the top half percent for 2 races in the year.
And what excited you, I guess, the most about that training? Was it the volume? Was it the intensity? Was it like your early obsession of like I just want to get as good as I can get at each individual thing, whether it was like skateboarding, swimming, academics? Was it that sort of thing? How you like maybe weren't as much into the volume or too much the intensity? You just wanted to keep getting better and better and better.
Yeah, I think yeah, kind of a bad habit of like any high achiever is going to have a similar attitude with a lot of things, but I really avoid doing things that I don't think I'm going to be good at. And that allows me to just right even with like learning, if I don't waste any energy learning things that aren't things I want to learn, and so I end up learning the things I do want to learn very quickly. Um, so it creates this like illusion of like I learn faster than I actually do, but I think I just allocate my resources a little bit more efficiently. Um, but what happened with triathlon was I obviously had the interest when I was younger. I thought I had some potential in it. I knew I wasn't going to be like world class, but I thought like I see no reason why I can't like at least be a mid pack pro. Um, and fell out of that for a long time. But I was watching the Tokyo Olympics in 2021, watching the triathlon, and Christian Blumenfeld won. And they're, the commentators are talking about how Christian trains like 35, 40 hours a week. And obviously he doesn't have the stereotypical body type, and it also looked like he was pushing himself a lot harder in order to win that race than his competition was, like Alex Yee and Hayden Wild. um, and so he finished and he was throwing up and I think had some heat stuff going on. But I thought that was super cool, so I instantly like looked up like who's his coach, and I started listening to Olav Alexander Boo and like a little bit of Errol Fighton, who's above Olav, but he has a little bit of a stronger accent, so it's harder to understand everything super clearly. It's not as smooth listening to him. But I tried taking him in a bunch of from them, and I already had the interest in exercise phys at that point. Um, so I think that combined with like my fetishism of the high volume training kind of was like, oh, like I think I could do this again. Like I should try doing this. And I have always felt like I have been able to learn most effectively when I'm also doing something related to it practically. So in the case of, learning about like metabolism or something, it's like much easier if like every day you're like kind of connecting the dots with your training, and you're just getting feedback back and forth, and they complement each other. So I thought that was cool. I thought I had the potential to turn pro again, and I knew like, I'm only getting older at this point, so like let's just try do it, because I mean I probably would have kept doing it until I did it like I was going to do it. Um, so that was kind of it. But yeah, it wasn't unfortunately like a love for triathlon. I do think triathlon's really cool, but I'd say with any sport I'm interested in, I'm more interested in specific athletes. So whether that's like a Formula One driver or a triathlete, like I don't just like generally watch triathlons or anything like that, but I will watch specific athletes perform.
I was I was interested because when I came across your profile, which you don't really post too much on Instagram, but like the other like
Yeah, it could
podcast
be
you've been
better.
on, I was like, all right, like this guy is jacked. Like I saw like you had like a deadlifting picture on your Instagram, and I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't even look at the weights. I just looked at your shoulders and your arms. I was like, man, good for this guy. And then there was like you running a 100-mile race, and you look like a bodybuilder. And I was like, all right, cool. Like there are other people out there who want to just be big and jacked and lean, but also doing like the ultra endurance stuff. What did
Yeah.
what did the training, what did the diet look like when you were doing a lot of your triathlon training? Were you also hitting the weights, or did the weights kind of suffer to make place for the endurance training?
Yeah. So I had, I'd say the peak of my like hybrid stuff was actually a few years before that in 2017, 2018. As I was transitioning out of the Navy, I hadn't found out about exercise science yet, so I didn't know exactly what I was going to pursue academically. So it's kind of in this period of for like 2 years where I just ended up training a bunch and I learned a bunch from that. But um, that's when I was like really trying to optimize both, doing ultra running and the powerlifting stuff. When it came to the Ironman during PhD, my primary goal was to turn pro in Ironman, and like I mean, even in that process, I dropped when I came into the PhD. I think I was like 205, 5'10", and I was decently lean. I think I've been 8 to 10% fat for almost all of the last like 10 years, but I yeah, I dropped from like 205 to at one point like 165. And I was still lifting a little bit, but it was, I mean, it was as low volume, high intensity as it could get. Like work up to like a 3 rep max front squat, and then maybe like a little bit of accessory work, just stuff that I thought um, might complement the triathlon. But I did find like trying to manage triathlon training and maybe the age and then also the PhD and then me getting sick a bunch and then me having insomnia from the Navy that was pretty bad and whatever brain injury stuff going on. I felt like whenever I added in the strength training at that point, it was kind of a detriment to my mood, and I just my insecurity isn't big enough anymore to fuel all of that. So I just didn't worry about it too much. I did a little bit of lifting, but it wasn't nearly as serious as like in 2018 when I was really doing both of them.
How was the eating component? Were you pretty good at getting in all the food that you had, or are you someone who was a little bit resistant to that? Like I remember when I was doing a bulk of my ultras for like 2 years, and I was doing just there was like months where every single weekend I had a 50-mile race. It was just
Damn.
consistent, and like there were some weekends where it would be like a 50K on Saturday, marathon on Sunday, and the next weekend 50
Mhm.
mile or next weekend 50 mile or next weekend back to back marathon days. Like it was insane. And for me, it was just like food and food and food and food. Um, Tons of showering, tons of bathroom breaks, tons of workouts. How did that work for you? Did you enjoy the process? Was it easy? Was it a challenge?
Yeah, I love to eat, and I have no, I it doesn't matter how much I train. Like the more I train, the more hungry I'll be, and I can pretty much always gain weight. I gain fat and muscle pretty easily. I also like lose fat pretty easily. I retain muscle well. Um, but yeah, I love eating, so I did enjoy that part of it. But once it started like taking a toll on like my mental health and stuff, I was like, this isn't this isn't cool anymore. I'm too, yeah, I feel like I've felt like shit for too much of the last 15 years to be into this anymore.
Do you think that the mental health took a bit of a hit because you were just doing so much?
I think it was a combination of things. Like Yeah, after my last deployment as a SEAL, my insomnia got like pretty ridiculous, and it would go for like several months. My sleep would start dropping to like 0 to 2 hours a night, and I was learning more and more about how important sleep is, and I'm already kind of a neurotic person, so you start like not being able to sleep and getting more anxious and frustrated that you're not sleeping. And yeah, I just started tanking my mood, and it would kind of go in cycles over a couple of years. And I started to feel like they were like getting a little bit worse. Um, but yeah, it was definitely exacerbated by just all of this stuff. But I don't know exactly because I feel like when I was in high school, I could have handled that a little bit better than I was. Maybe there's some other stuff going on. Sean and I looked at my blood work a few times over 2023, the year I was doing best in triathlon. I don't know how familiar you are with CD4 counts and HIV, but my reference range for the listener is like 600 to 1600 units, and mine on I want to say three different occasions over a couple months was like 400. So it's in between the bottom of the reference range and is below the reference range, and it was getting close to, an AIDS diagnosis. I don't have HIV, but I think something was going on with that. I never figured it out. I haven't tested CD4 since then, but at least my white blood cell count has kind of returned with like rest and stuff. So it could have all been related. Maybe there's some immune stuff going on too that was contributing to it and kind of reducing my exercise tolerance. Um, yeah, either way, I felt like while I was doing the PhD, whenever I would start to ramp up training again, no matter how slowly and controlled I did it, I feel like I just kind of hit a point at a couple weeks in where I'd feel like garbage, and it was doable for the 2 seasons, and then after that, I think I realized that this isn't that important.
It's interesting though because one thing that I didn't take into account until I was in grad school was the life stress that you also take on. And it's
Mm,
funny because when I look back at maybe high school and college and the training I was doing, I mean it wasn't as much as it was when it was in grad school for about 6 years between masters and PhD, but in college and high school when I was doing marathons and I was lifting weights and I was hanging out with friends and doing classes, I mean, I did everything 100% or nothing. And it's like that works when you're 15 through 22 or whatever because you're invincible. And then like the life stress starts to build up and 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 up when you have to think about like a career, politics within the workplace, keeping a job, I don't know, like license, food, rent, partners, the whole universe as a whole kind of comes into like clear view and you go, oh, like you can take, I don't know, Shohei Otani because the World Series is on right now. And the man's making $40,000 an at bat, which is just bananas to think about. I'm like, okay, so all right, all you need to do is play baseball. Don't worry about anything else. Like, internal locus of control, focus on the lane you're in, just hit the baseball, show, hey, you're good, and throw the ball too. But for us, it's like I had to come to that point too where I started placing in not Ironman, ultra marathons, and I won one of them. And
mm,
I was like, oh, this is it, this is it. And then I was like, wait, no, like I've interviewed enough triathletes and ultra runners to know that a lot of them have side jobs and a lot of them also put in their Instagram profile, DM me for coaching, meaning I'm not making a ton of money. I also need to have a side hustle. And I will
yeah.
tip my cap a million times over for the people who are doing these unbelievable feats of strength and endurance. But at some point, it takes a toll and you almost have to be realistic. And I'm happy that I found that in my early to mid 20s. And it sounded like you did too.
Yeah. And Um, yeah, I just don't think I don't see any goal being worth feeling how I did for a lot of like 2023 going into 24. So yeah, I just don't see myself ever like pushing myself like that again. But yeah, now I'm training for some ultras now. There's this 100-mile trail race with like 24,000 feet of gain next May that I want to do, but I'm on the wait list for it. So there's a 12,000 feet of gain 50 miler like 6 weeks before that I am signed up for. So um, yeah, maybe I might need to find a different 100 miler. But that's one thing. I've never done a trail 100, and that's been one of the things that's kind of intimidated me a little bit because yeah, my when I when I did the 100 miles in 18 and a half hours when I was 16, that was around a track. So it was, like people think like, oh, like the track's so boring, but like the track's perfect. You have your porta potty right there. You have every resource you need right there. Like there's no, like logistically, it's the best place to do it. So, yeah, as long as you can get over that boredom piece. But I'd never done like a super hilly 100 miler. Longest trail ultra I've done is 100K, which was with a client and friend. So it was a little bit more of a casual run for me. But yeah, that's what I'm like looking at doing next. And I lift like once or twice a week now. And I kind of have to force myself to do it just so I don't lose it too much. But mainly I'm just enjoying like the chill runs right now. And then once a week I do like a threshold run, and I still see progress with that.
What's the 50 and what's the race that you're currently on the wait list for?
The 50 is called I think the Mount Mitchell Heartbreaker 50 miler, and it's somewhere north of South Carolina. And then the 100 is called the Hellbender 100, and I think that's around like Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay. You ever want to do one of the big races like Western States or Leadville or Hard Rock or any of those really really difficult ones with like altitude and extreme weather conditions?
I don't think I mean, I might be down for like a high altitude race. I think usually I do well at altitude. But I don't think like, yeah, extreme. I wanted to do Badwater when I was like, so when I did that ultra and when I did that 24-hour run in high school, around the track, I got connected with a guy named Nicodemus Holland, who is the youngest person to ever run Badwater. He did it when he was 19. And I mean, at the time I was like, I'll do, I'll be the youngest person, I was 16, and I think like it was doable if I, um, stuck with that and didn't go to, you know, join the Navy. Um, yeah, I think maybe I'd be interested in doing like, like one of the 200 or 250 milers. I'm sure that's a different thing. Like I'm not like, I'm not someone who's going to be winning it or anything, but so it's probably a whole different experience because it's just so long. It's probably a lot of hiking, but I am curious about something like that. But generally I kind of like I like my like nice conditions for it. I'm not one for like a ton of discomfort. That's probably why I didn't do so great. And like my longevity in the SEAL teams is not very long. Um, a lot of those guys can just put up with a lot more discomfort than I was okay with. So, I prefer the races that are like, if it could be at like good temperatures, I'm down with a lot of elevation change if that's the challenge, or maybe I'm down with like a lot of, like, you know, a lot of heat or something if that's the challenge, whatever. The last 100 I did was in Hawaii in July, and that one was very hot and humid. Um, but yeah, not really interested in like Barkley marathons or something, something with some like weird abstract challenge in it.
I think it's perfectly okay to say that you want to work unbelievably hard at something, but within relatively controlled conditions. Because
Yeah,
like I
man.
live in Florida now, and I'm originally from Philadelphia, and in Philly, you really take advantage of the spring and the fall, especially for marathons,
Hmm.
and you can pretty much do ultras like all year long. So I really took advantage of September, October, November for marathons, and then again March, April, May for marathons, and then year round I would do ultras. And I was like, all right, cool, like this is all good. I have some beautiful 40 to 70-degree training. Awesome. I ate it up. Like that's all that stuff back there and a bunch of stuff that you don't see in the closet. I have a lot of age group awards. I won a couple. This is great. Man, down in Florida, it is it, it's so hot and it's so humid. And it's like my
Yeah.
friends make fun of me on Strava for like running on the treadmill, or I do the stair stepper a lot, and they're like, "Oh, you're not out
Mhm.
running." I'm like, dude, it's 110 degrees real feel like mid October. And I'm like, I mean,
Yeah.
today it's cooler, but like I think 2 or 3 weeks ago we went to Tampa for the Eagles Bucks game, and it was over
Mhm.
100 degrees real feel. And while my friends are up in Philly and it's like 55, I'm like, yeah, down here it's like 100, 110. So I'm like, I will run on the treadmill any day of the week, but still run 10 or 12 miles, but I'm not going to do that outside. So I'm okay kind of controlling my conditions, but still working really that hard. And I've done the stage races, the 12 hours, the 24s, and I'm like, yeah, it's around a track. Cool. I'll keep going.
Yeah, yeah. I and that's actually another thing that contributed to me feeling like dog ass when I was doing the triathlon during the PhD was the South Carolina summers. So yeah, I ended up I hate riding my bike on a trainer. I wish I liked it more because I'm pretty gifted at cycling. I'm not gifted at running or swimming, but like I mean, that's the only reason I was able to do well in Ironman was like because my cycling is like really strong. Um, but I just hated riding the trainer, so I ended up being out in the heat probably a lot more than I needed to be. And I, of course, tried to adjust for that as much as I could in other areas with getting most of my running in on a treadmill and stuff like that, but it probably just wasn't enough overall.
Yeah. What what made you want to go into the SEAL teams?
It was at the time. So when I met Dan Cirillo, who was the SEAL who trained me up for Buds, he told me a little bit about it, and I can't remember exactly what like our first interactions were about it, but he he made it sound really cool. I was like, I mean, he just made it sound like the most like badass people on earth, and like some of them are. Um, there's just I don't know. There's like there are some like weird people in it that can just do things that you I mean, and like some people would say that about like my like physical accomplishments, but I think like some of theirs are a lot more impressive. Like you have guys that you don't think can like they like maybe someone looks like kind of overweight and you wouldn't expect anything of them, and then they're able to carry 100 pounds and like run with it and like do it well for several hours every day for weeks. So yeah, you get a lot of stuff like that, just like a lot of freaks. And then you also have like the legit freaks who were like D1 runners and then are also good at the other stuff. And then you have like some Olympians and stuff like that. So I'd heard all of that stuff going into it, and then he had told me like it's the hardest like training in the world, and so I was like, well, if it's the hardest training, like I got to do it. And the other thought was like because of all my insecurity about like my awkwardness and being a fat kid and like being a loser or whatever, um, like that's the ultimate accomplishment. Like no one can call you a loser if you're a Navy SEAL. And I didn't know a ton about like Navy SEALs at the time. Like I'd heard about Navy SEALs, but I didn't know much until I was like 16, and I didn't really seriously consider it until I was coming up on like 17 years old.
What was it like? Did you have a relatively easy time getting through buds? Were you able to almost dissociate the pain and just say, okay, this is a competition. I'm already pretty fit. This is going to make me fitter. This is what I'm looking towards, versus maybe some other people who ring the bell and they're like, this isn't worth it.
I would not say I had. So I had a smooth time getting through all of SEAL training. I didn't fail anything in buds. I never got rolled, so I was, one of 11 originals who went all the way through in the same class. So in that sense, it went well for me. Any of the testable things I did well at. So like, and that's kind of how I am for anything. Like if I have a test set in front of me and there's very clear parameters for like how to prepare for it, I'll prepare more than other people, and I'll learn at least as quick as them. And so if you prepare more and you have a similar aptitude for it, then you're going to do well on the outcome. So all that stuff went well, but I besides that, I was pretty mediocre in buds, which a lot of people are surprised by. But for whatever reason, like even like we do like timed runs and stuff, like I just wasn't doing great, and I feel like I wasn't recovering as fast as everyone else. Once we got to the end of buds and we were able to run in shoes again, and then I was like, okay, well now I'm back in the, maybe top quarter to top 10%. But wearing boots and pants, like running on a beach, like it seemed like all my run training that I had done like wasn't helping me as much as I had hoped. And maybe some of it's like I did gain some weight going into buds, and that might have slowed me down a little bit and hurt my recovery just because it was like weight that I had kind of newly put on. Um, I wasn't, too worried about it because people have like thoughts on like, oh, you should gain weight before buds anyways, because it'll help you like handle the cold a little bit better. Um, but yeah, I didn't do great. That was a little bit difficult for me. And because I was like awkward and antisocial, like I wasn't like, like I wasn't a social butterfly or anything, or someone who like naturally made friends with a lot of people in the class. So I was kind of like awkward a little bit, like not like a loner, but just like not someone who like really fit in. And then I also was like kind of struggling to perform on like the day to day things. And then like the truth of it is like for I don't know how they do it, but like a lot of those guys are just like really hard workers, and really able to put the team before themselves in a way that like I just don't like I don't know if I'm even like capable of doing that. They just have something better than me in them. So it's like, I was able to get through. I, I sucked my first 2 years as a SEAL. Um, and then I turned around with, fitness and stuff and taking things a little bit more seriously. And then I did well, but it took a while. I think another thing that didn't help me was I was a lot younger than almost everyone else. Especially when I got to my SEAL team after SQT, I think I was the youngest person at Team 5 by like 5 years, and I stayed the youngest the entire time I was there. Um, and so yeah, when I got to my first platoon, like I wasn't old enough to legally train because I was 19 when I checked in. And so I'm awkward, I'm Asian, I'm autistic, and I'm not allowed to legally drink. And even if I was, I probably wouldn't want to drink anyways. I'm not like, oh, like let's go out with the boys. Like I'm not really like that. So yeah, all those things like made it a little bit more difficult for me.
Did you read Can't Hurt Me?
So I have not. Interestingly, when I was in high school, I when I was doing all the ultra running stuff, I feel like I was one of the first person to ever be like aware of David Goggins as like an ultra endurance athlete. I knew he was a SEAL, but I was reading all his like blog posts from like his first ultras, like as they were coming out. Um, and I had talked to Dan a little bit about David Goggins because Dan was actually one of his buds instructors, and I don't the SEAL teams generally seem to have kind of a negative view of David Goggins, and I think some of it is like ego driven about like all the publicity he's gotten, but they'll frame it as he he's like they'll say he was like a kind of a shit SEAL and like a combat instead chose to work out. I don't know the truth of it. I'm sure it's a little bit of a bunch of things, but you generally get that kind of attitude from from the community about guys who have gotten a lot of publicity after getting out, until they get out, and then they'll go write the book, and then they'll get the popularity, and then it's okay.
No, I mean, it's funny because on that line, he had said that one of his issues, and it sounded like you guys had a very similar path. I mean, he had a lot of like injuries that he talked about and getting like pneumonia and like he had a lot of that, but like he seemed like with all the physical training, he just ate it up. Like he was
Mm.
trying to be like the fastest, the strongest, and he was like, yeah, that's what gave me strength and confidence. But he even said he wasn't, quote unquote, one of the boys. And he said that
Yeah.
that made it a lot difficult because he couldn't build rapport. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because now that I kind of look back on everything and I'm like, okay, I think that we all have gifts that we were given at birth, maybe one, two, or three that you really lean into. It comes really easy to you, and it shines throughout your life. Like one of my best friends is unbelievably funny. Like he can't not entertain you. He can play about 12,
Uh-huh.
12 different instruments. He's insanely funny. He's brilliant. And he also kind of looks funny too. So everything is just you're in a room with him and you're just like, oh, here it is. And it's like
Yeah.
him and I have been together. We've been best friends since we were 5. And it's just
Mm.
nothing changes with him. Whereas LeBron is the best, him, Michael Jordan, whatever, Kobe best at dunking a basketball. I mean, they can entertain us. You have Einstein, even Musk, the smartest people who ever lived, Richard Feynman. And for me, I was like, okay, like I'm just really good with people. Nothing else is easy. I'm not that smart. I'm not that talented. Like nothing is easy. I've had to work for everything. I've failed classes in college, had to retake the classes. I've been dumped by girlfriends, like whatever. But like I can have a conversation with anyone about anything, anytime. But that doesn't come easy to everybody. And it's
Yeah.
interesting hearing something like the SEALs, which is so delicate and technically driven down to the detail that you need rapport. You need to be buddy buddy. You need to build up that system. And you're not the second or third or the fourth person I've heard that from where it's like, if you're not building that relationships with all those different people, it's a bit of a struggle.
Yeah. And like luckily, yeah, when I finished SEAL training, yeah, of course, like I wanted to be a SEAL, but I had a mental block when I graduated SEAL training about like, oh, like I just finished the thing. But really, like you're gonna have a bad time if that's your attitude. Like it, because when you show up to the team and like all the platoon comes back from Afghanistan and people were getting killed and you know they've done SEAL training and then they've done multiple deployments and they've been in like pretty heavy combat. So you're no one, and you have to know that you're no one and that you haven't even started yet. Because you know buds and SQT are like just the minimum to get there, and once you get there, like you're gonna do another year and a half of training before you do your first deployment. Um, so I struggled with that. Um, and so I didn't have my usual like hyper fixation on being good at being a SEAL. And I think had I had that attitude then, I would have done well. I do believe like if I want to be good at something, I will be good at it. It just my focuses were like elsewhere at the time, which I yeah ended up kind of paying for. But after after like a year of like kind of hating it and going through some like pretty rough times with it, I was like, okay, it's time to stop feeling sorry for myself. And like yeah, maybe like my reputation with this platoon's kind of ruined, but I started exercising really hard, and I got in really good shape. And so by the time the end of that deployment cycle came around and I got put in a new platoon, it was a much better fit of guys that I got put with. Some of them were in my previous platoon with me, and they were the guys that I got along well with. And so it was a much better group of guys to be with, and I had a better attitude, and I was in like much better shape that second time around. And I took it really seriously because not only did I just not want to repeat the last 2 years, but I also knew we had a good chance of deploying to Iraq for that deployment, and we had also during the workup, the pre-deployment training, um, there was a SEAL who got killed at the site that we were going to be deploying to. So like we thought it was like going to be a legit deployment, so I was taking it seriously, and I was really trying to be in the best shape I could be and get as much out of like all the training pre-deployment that I could get.
Did you enjoy the day-to-day process of what you were doing as a SEAL?
Uh, not really. Like as a whole, I'm very grateful for the experience, and there was occasionally things that I found to be really cool. Um, jumping out of a C-130, like a ramp exit out of the back of a cargo plane at night. And before you jump, everyone's got night vision. They've got their weapons. Maybe you've got oxygen. Um, Maybe you've got other equipment that you're skydiving with, like different saws or different types of weapons on you that you're also jumping out with, and it's pretty cool. Like that was one of the times where it's cool, and then like occasionally doing night dives. Um, when it's pitch black underwater, like it sucks and it's cold, but like there's something cool about that. Like, it's like you're kind of getting to do the stuff that you saw like in Call of Duty or Gears of War or whatever. And it looked cool. So that stuff was cool. So occasionally I would view it positively, but I think, yeah, I don't know what my problem is. I'm just kind of I just maybe it's the autism or something, but I kind of struggle with finding a lot of that to be enjoyable. A lot of the guys like enjoyed shooting every day, but like to me, I was like, I mean, you're shooting a lot. Your hands are bleeding because you're shooting so much, and like I'm just like, oh, my like hand hurts, my back hurts, like from wearing this body armor all day. Like I'm tired. I'm waking up at 4 every day so I can get in a lift before we start doing this. Um, so maybe I made myself a little bit more tired, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of have like a negative attitude most of the time about most things, which I haven't quite obviously haven't figured out yet how to turn that around. But yeah, occasionally there would be moments where I was like enjoying stuff and I thought it was really cool. But for the most part, a lot of the day to day was you're traveling, you're tired, you're sore. Um, and you're going to be uncomfortable, and what you're doing next is probably more uncomfortable. So that's something you just got to be okay with, and even find enjoyment in. And there was ways to find enjoyment in it, but like overall, I knew pretty early on, like I'm not going to be a career SEAL.
And do a lot of those people who are not career SEALs, do they almost take a little bit of heat for like, I don't know, like kind of leaving early, that sort of thing? Because you had brought up that idea before of like you may not have been as successful as you could have been as a SEAL, which seems like a misnomer because it's almost like it's like that joke of like what do you call the lowest GPA in the graduating
Yeah,
class? It's like you call him doctor, right? It's almost like you're a
yeah,
SEAL, but it's like
yeah.
if you weren't batting, lead off, but you were batting in the ninth spot. Did you ever take a little bit of heat from that you weren't in there for 20 or 30 years?
No, not really. I was pretty outspoken about my intentions of not staying in long term, which, is not recommended because it may kind of guarantee that you're not going to get to go to a lot of the schools you want to go to. But it was after the point where I was getting the schools I wanted to go to, and I was like, I'm good. I'm definitely not staying in, and I'm not going to be convinced otherwise. So yeah, I actually didn't. I mean, they'd ask every once in a while, like, "Are you sure you don't want to like reenlist?" But yeah, I just wasn't into it. I would say that so I didn't get anything negative in that area, but I think the guys that do, like if you don't do 2 deployments and you weren't injured or whatever to get like if your legs get blown off or something, and so you get out because of that, like no one's gonna give you shit, or like, but like the guys you stay in, like there was a dude in one of my sister platoons who on the deployment, coming back, like in Afghanistan, he came back as I was checking into the team. I think he like, I think an IED went off. He got like shrapnel in the face from it, and he had a fake eye, and so he had to go like I think he had to go back through a lot of the training again. And that's been the story with like a couple different guys, like, losing their dominant eye or something and having to go back through like SQT, just to demonstrate tactical proficiency with a new eye. Um, yeah, guys, I like that's the kind of guy they want in the SEAL teams. And, if you could have everyone be like that, then that would be ideal. And a lot of the guys are. Um, but I'd say if you're someone who did like one deployment and it wasn't even most of the deployments right now aren't combat deployments. You'd be surprised, like most SEALs are not going to see combat. And that was the case up to like 2000 too. If you were like a SEAL in the 80s or 90s, you probably weren't doing any like real combat. And then come 2000 to like 2000 and, kind of ended around 2017. There was like a lot of combat, especially 2000 to 2010. So it's a completely different era. But yeah, usually if you don't do your two deployments, you kind of like I would feel embarrassed saying that I was a SEAL like in any public context if I hadn't done my two deployments. And luckily, my second one did have combat, so I feel like it makes me feel a little bit better about it. But I, like to make it clear that I was just a lot of those guys are are really crazy, like really impressive on another level, like in a way that you never see anywhere else.
How so?
So especially some of the guys who end up going to SEAL Team 6, I don't know a ton of people that have gone to like tier one units, but some of them that I have known and gotten to work with, there were some that went through Buds and SQT with me. Um, I mean, they're guys that get 99th percentile on the ASVAB. Uh, they went to college before, and you never see them do poorly at anything ever. Like there's one dude I'm thinking of in particular, and he's like a legacy SEAL. His brother was a SEAL, his dad was a SEAL, and he went to SEAL Team 6. I've, I mean, if the zombie apocalypse was happening, he's the dude like I would want to run. I've just never seen him do poorly at anything ever. And it's not like he was like a insane physical specimen or anything. He doesn't like necessarily look like a guy who would just dominate everything, but he was. Um, And not only that, but there's sort of the softer skills with that too, where they're just really okay with discomfort and putting other people's comfort before theirs in a way that I just didn't quite get to that. Maybe some of it was maturity, but I think some of it's like just how I am as well. Um, and yeah, like they're a lot of them are guys that are just able to pick up on new skills faster than like anyone else, and it doesn't matter what the skill is, like they're going to be better than you at it. um so that's the case for like a lot of the guys, just really hard workers, really competent, most competent people I've ever seen, and and some of them are also really insanely fit too.
It's like the John Wick of SEALs. He's
Yeah.
like very unbecoming Keanu Reeves, and then he just like rocks all four of those movies. Like you can't stop as he's
Yeah.
going up the steps in like the fourth movie. Like you can't stop this guy.
Yeah, it's obviously John Wick's a movie and it's dramatized and whatever, but if there was a legit human comparison, like you get a bunch of those guys in the SEAL teams, especially at SEAL Team 6.
So what's next for you?
So I'm not totally sure right now. Because of some of my service related stuff, I participated in an ibogaine study that UT Austin was doing last January, so it was 10 months ago now. And I don't know how much you know about ibogaine, but it's really cool. There had been some case reports of guys with like pretty debilitating multiple sclerosis who were able to take ibogaine and within several months had like almost total reductions in their brain lesions from the MS, and then regained full like movement, and within a year went from being bedridden to like running a 200-mile ultra. um, and there's cases of people with bedridden, like ready to physician assisted suicide themselves, with Parkinson's, and then within a month of taking ibogaine, they're riding a bike again and have full function. So ibogaine's really cool. It has a lot of promise for brain injuries and for opioid addiction. So that's really exciting to me now, and I mean, I had a great experience with it in my study, like in my participation in the UT Austin study. So I am interested in getting involved with that space, even if it's sort of like in a volunteer context. As far as like what's more likely professionally for me right now, um, some of my dissertation research used ketone monoesters as a tool to prevent cognitive decline during hyperthermia. And I would like to get involved with more of that work. And I have been talking to he's the founder of one of the new ketone companies, and he was at Delta G before. I've been talking to him for like the last year because he helped provide all the product for my dissertation work. Saved us like $5,000 because the ketones are so expensive. So yeah, I'd love to get involved with the ketones. My interest is benefiting like the veteran population and allowing whatever comes of that to trickle down to athletics and stuff like that. But I see ketone monoesters being pretty promising when it comes to taking prophylactically in the event where you're going to be exposed to blasts, and if you are exposed to blasts, then taking the ketones as part of the recovery process. And then also, like my dissertation work showed, they could be taken to prevent cognitive decline during hyperthermia. They also improved exercise performance in that context. I know there's a little bit mixed on the physical effects of ketones. And then there's evidence in a bunch of other studies that ketone monoesters are beneficial for recovery and for cognition in a few different environments. So yeah, I would love to do that work as well. Hoping something comes of that soon. I was told there might be good news coming with that in the next week. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, generally interested in high performance and working with like military populations just because that's my background. It's an easy sell for me to get into, and I have expertise in the area. And it's like the one thing that I bring a very unique package to, having been in special operations and then having a PhD in exercise science, all contributes to me being a good fit for that. And I'm interested in it too. So
Well,
yeah.
there's certainly a population to serve there. We
Mhm.
this past, I guess, March or April, our university did a co-conference with the Mayo Clinic down here in
Okay.
Jacksonville, and we gave some talks to a lot of military veterans. I think like they were all out, and a lot of them were like nurses, PAs, doctors who were like SEALs, Rangers in the Air Force, and it was interesting hearing their take on what their real world experience was like 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out. A lot of the physical and psychological, I would say, like rebounds that happen from being in combat, or just the crazy amount of training and the crazy workload and like a lot of metabolic issues and thyroid issues that happened. And it made me really want to get into that tactical space. So I think that
Yeah.
someone with your expertise, both hands-on and then research wise, textbook wise, you would really move the needle with helping countless people. So I do hope you get into that in a
Yeah.
huge way.
Yeah, and there's so much low hanging fruit in that space. Like you would think like, special operations is kind of you think like tip of the spear and like cutting edge, and in some ways it is. But in a lot of ways it's not. I'd never even heard about, heat acclimation or anything like that until I was out of the Navy. But we do a lot of operating in hot environments. We do training in hot environments, and guys have heat strokes. So you'd think like, if there are ways to help mitigate that risk, that we would be doing it, but we just don't. And then there's also a large percentage of people that don't take fitness as seriously as I think they should. And so the issue isn't like coming up with the optimal training intervention. It's like it's even like a behavioral intervention at that point. Um, and then, yeah, there are a lot of negatives that come with being in that community. It is like very high stress, very high work tempo, very exhausting. And then you have the TBI, you have the trauma that comes from combat, or sometimes like training accidents or whatever. And all that kind of adds up. But on top of that, you have, a heavy drinking culture, sleep less culture, and like, work harder, sleep less, drink more, or whatever. And if you get exposed to a bunch of blasts in training and then you don't sleep much because you're up all night drinking, you're not helping yourself. And then, you know, guys get out and everything gets attributed to like the job, but there are a lot of other things that if you did those a little bit better, like you probably help your longevity quite a bit. And so yeah, there's a ton of room for improvement in all of that, at least when it comes to the safety and like long-term health and well-being of that community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. I'll be really excited to follow along with everything you're be doing with that. Um, where can people find you? So you can be a guest on some more episodes and keep having these conversations, getting the word out there.
Yeah, hell yeah, always down. My Yeah, really, I have a LinkedIn. Yeah, I guess I don't even, I just made it a couple weeks ago, so I don't even know what people share with their LinkedIn besides like their
Guy's got a
LinkedIn URL, which I'm
PhD,
not going to
just
read
made a
out.
LinkedIn. That's amazing.
Well, I never needed a LinkedIn. I had jobs or interviews like handed to me pretty easily, and like this is the first, I'm the most qualified I've ever been, and I'm having um, I haven't been super proactive with the process. I'm really waiting on this opportunity with the ketone company to happen because that's what I'm pretty excited about. So I've just kind of been looking for part-time stuff in the meantime, and I'm I'm probably a little bit spoiled and got to a point where I don't necessarily need to do work that I don't want to do. So I'm probably a little pickier than I need to be, and I haven't been looking that hard. But yeah, I ended up making the LinkedIn a couple weeks ago because I thought it would be a good idea. Um, so I have that. I'm happy to connect on there, and then I have an Instagram, which, like you said, I don't post on a ton, and doesn't have. Yeah, unless there's, something from the podcast that gets shared or whatever, or the occasional conference from the past few years, I really don't share much academically on there. But my username on Instagram is at blankets, so Blainekets. Um, and I think yeah, that's pretty much it. If people like DM me on there, I'm usually I delete Instagram a lot, so I'm sometimes I miss things for a couple days, but if I go back on, I'll see it and I'll respond to things.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Lintz, for coming on today and sharing all this information. It was really awesome to chat about like the lifting and the triathlons and the military service you've done. This was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was fun.